not incremental. Joanne's card back. So I'll hand you over to Chrissy, and we'll go through simplifying extended events with dbatools.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Does it sound good, Craig?
Yeah, it's good.
Cool. Alrighty. Okay. So how many of you here use dbatools? Sweet. All right. And how many of you are from the PowerShell group? All right. I do have something for you. I kind of added a couple things to this session to make it relevant for you as well. Let me see. Oh, I have my timer. So I'm going to start that now. And I'm going to stop the video because whenever I present from a webcast, I stand up and it looks dumb. So I'll stop it now, but I'm going to continue recording and talking. All right. So, something else. How many of you currently use extended events for those SQL Server people in the audience? 0. Okay. How many of you use the profiler? Awesome. All right. So with this session, I had proposed it to SQL Bits with Gianluca Sartori back in November, and at the time I was team profiler, and I was like, if I get accepted, then I'm going to create commands and see where it takes me, and at the end, see if I've switched from being team profiler to team XEvents, and it actually worked. I'm now team XEvents, so I hope that you guys do as well. For the PowerShell people in the crowd, back a long time ago, Microsoft used profiler and traces, and it was really simple, and then they moved over to and recommended extended events because they're faster, they provide more information, but there's not a lot of adoption. And so what I did was I wanted to see, can I use PowerShell as a bit of an advocacy tool? Can we create something that's so cool with PowerShell that it'll actually help increase the adoption of something that Microsoft is pushing forward? And it seems like it's working. So that's exciting. All right, so quick introduction to who I am. My name is Chrissy Lemaire. I am CL on Twitter. It's actually, if you follow me, I was sending out live links that lined it up with 8:45. And so we have a couple links that are out there already. I am a PowerShell MVP. I also won Best Lightning Talk and Best Speaker at SQL Saturday Dublin a couple years ago, which completely blew my mind. I'm co-lead of the Past DevOps virtual group. So if you're into DevOps, including PowerShell, we're at devops.past.org. And for my work, I'm a SQL Server DBA with GDIT at NATO Special Ops headquarters in Belgium. All right, so on today's agenda, I'm gonna give you an overview of extended events and talk about the benefits and challenges of extended events. Then I'm gonna give you a real quick introduction to dbatools, an introduction to XEsmart Target, and do a demo, and then take some questions. And Craig, real quick, how much time do I have?
As much as you want, like an hour is good.
Okay. Alrighty, and then at the end, I'll take some questions. So with extended events, as I'd mentioned before, it is a replacement for SQL Server Trace and Profiler. It was first introduced in SQL Server 2008, but the real replacement came from version 2012 and above. So whenever it first started out, it was kind of weak sauce, and then with 2012, they had a lot more features. So extended events, they're a lightweight event capture infrastructure. They work from deep within the SQL OS. There's a much lower performance overhead than with traces. And it allows for capturing events that are not available otherwise, meaning it not only provides events that are available in traces, but also extends that out. And like I mentioned before, it is Microsoft's recommended way forward. So what are they good at? The first thing is troubleshooting. So if you had some problems with your SQL Server at 3:40 in the morning, then you can go and use extended events to find out exactly what was going on with your SQL Server at that time. And they also help to tune performance because they can show you which queries consume most resources. They also help with capacity planning, so they can sit there and capture how fast your databases are growing, and you can kind of project the sizes from there. They also help with baselining, so you can establish a baseline and then see if your systems are behaving normally. And then they're also useful for alerting, so they can let you know that something wrong is going on. In addition, SQL Server Extended Events, they work on SQL Azure, and they're nice and fast. If you check out Jonathan Kehayas's Measuring Observer Overhead of SQL Trace versus Extended Events, he gives a real big deep dive that shows there are people that were like, there's not really a difference between traces and extended events. And it turns out that there is, and this blog, if you go to dbatools.io/XEoverload, it'll just redirect you, XEoverhead, it'll redirect you to his blog post where he details why it's so fast. Then also Erin Stellato, she writes a lot about extended events. Actually, a lot of the SQL skills team does. And she says that extended events are good because they create multiple sessions that can be stopped and started as needed. They can track causality. They can write to multiple targets. And now you can actually work with that data in SQL Server Management Studio. So they have all of these benefits. Why are people still using traces and Profiler? The first thing, and I'll show you PowerShell people out in the crowd, that Profiler, to get it started, it's way more straightforward than extended events. There's also, traces provide a consistent interface for mixed environments. So if you have SQL Server 2000, SQL Server 2005, and all the way up, you know, if you're using traces, it's the same all the way from 2000 to the current version. Also, like I mentioned earlier, it's faster to just set up a quick trace. And I really loved, all of this information actually comes from Erin's blog post that was really cool. It's called Why Do You Avoid Extended Events? And that's at dbatools.io/yprofiler. And this quote is really cool. It says, extended events are more efficient for the SQL Server engine, but not more efficient for the DBA. And a lot of people, they already have their library of Profiler templates and don't really want to let those go. And in addition, this one was one of the reasons why I never wanted to switch to extended events. So whenever I was like, all right, Microsoft says that this is the way to go, so I'm going to go that way. And then I was like, how do I get this information? And it was horrifying because it was XML. And I have a browser that's open in the back, and I'll show you what the queries actually look like. It was extremely off-putting for me, and I consider it totally outrageous to expect that from us. Also, something that was listed in the comments was that templates work remotely across all instances. And the commenter that posted this actually was not aware that both traces and Profiler and extended events, they do have templates that work remotely across all instances. Another complaint was that extended events are persistent and therefore they have to be stopped. If you start them, they're persistent, they'll just keep being started. And with traces, you can create it. And if you restart your SQL Server, it actually disappears, which I find is inconvenient. But people actually find that extended events persisting is inconvenient. Another thing is that traces and Profiler, they provide the ability to import performance monitoring data, and then you can actually have this really nice, actually it's not super nice, it looks like the 90s, but it is a graph that shows a correlation between perfmon data and traces. In addition, it provides a consistent user experience across SQL Server, analysis services, and the database engine. It's also, you know, traces and Profiler, it's so easy to use, which makes it easy to train others. So you could just have somebody load up a Profiler and say, this is how, you know, you can look at all of the information. It's also, Microsoft provides a tool to replay traces natively. I think they provide actually a number of tools. And Microsoft Premier Support still asks for traces in a lot of instances. And that is true to this day. Aaron actually wrote to Bob Ward to confirm that this was the case, and he wrote back with really detailed information. And something that someone else mentioned to me was that there's a stored procedure that's used to read these extended event files, and it is a CPU hog. It puts stress on the SQL Server itself. So that's a ton of valid reasons to switch, and I think it kind of shows, why everyone in the room is still on extended, or is still on traces and profiler and not on extended events yet. But what if we could make it less painful? And this is where I'm going to talk about dbatools. Now, dbatools, it can't help with mixed environments, but it can help migrate to newer ones that do support extended events. dbatools is a PowerShell module that was created by and for the SQL Server community back in 2014. And it has grown, and it's a really exciting project. So because it started out as a migration module, the support goes all the way back whenever we can to SQL Server 2000, and then we also ensure that it works on the current version. It also supports Express through Enterprise Edition, so you don't have to have a fancy version of SQL Server for our PowerShell toolset to work. It works with clustered and standalone instances, with Windows and SQL authentication, with default and named instances, and with multiple instances on one server. So basically, whatever you have to throw at us, we try to support. The installation is super easy. So for those of you in the PowerShell crowd, within the SQL Server community, there was a lot of pushback with PowerShell because Microsoft really didn't provide an easy way. You know how like SharePoint or System Center or even Active Directory, all of these have these modules that have like 700 commands. And Microsoft really dropped the ball with SQL Server. And so a lot of people, whenever they were like, use PowerShell, they weren't end users. The SQL community had to be developers instead of end users. And dbatools has really changed that. And whenever it was first created, it was very important to me that I make it as easy as possible. And so even the install is super easy. You can just use the PowerShell gallery with install module dbatools. This will install it for everyone on the system. It requires system administrator access. Or you can install module dbatools and set your scope to the current user, and that'll just install it for you. And we do have an extensive download page. Whenever I thought about my favorite open source programs that I liked, I thought of Notepad++. It's a very straightforward download page, and I enjoy using it. And so we kind of modeled it after that. And I want to give a shout out to Microsoft for providing the DLLs that we need. Whenever I used to give this presentation, we were like, you have to install SQL Server Management Studio. And then we had to account for people having, SQL Server 2012 installed versus 2017. Now, the way that they're pushing forward with open source, they actually gave us permission to download and include the SMO libraries. So whenever you import dbatools, you're using SQL Server 2017's library. Something that was also important, as I'd mentioned before, since there was that pushback, we wanted to make it as simple as possible. And we include a lot of documentation with every command. So you can use the built-in get help. So you just do get help, start DBA migration -detailed, and this will give you all of, the synopsis, description, each of the parameters, all of the examples, links, and things like that. And we also provide documentation on dbatools.io. So if you do like dbatools.io/command name, you'll actually be taken to a page that has pictures, sometimes videos, and details there. And like it mentions here, if you go to dbatools.io/YouTube, that is a short link. and you can watch a couple of our videos. So one of the biggest things about dbatools that people love is that it takes away the pain of migrations, and that's why Start DBA migration is listed here. For those of you that are SQL people, this does an instance-to-instance migration. So it'll migrate your databases, your logins with the passwords, with the SIDs, with all the permissions, the jobs, the extended events, all across the board. And I'll actually be talking about it at SQL GLA in September. Next thing I'll just cover real quick, XE Smart Target was created by Gianluca Santori. I think I say his last name wrong. He goes by Spaghetti DBA on Twitter, so I just call him Spaghetti in real life, and he responds to it. He created this, and basically, he extends the capabilities of extended events. So he allows you to write event data to database tables. You can alert via email. You can write to CSV. You can execute some T-SQL in response to an event. You can replay, which is really nice. And it also has an extensible design so that you can code your own responses. Like dbatools, it is free and open source, and you can find it on GitHub. All right, so now it's demo time. By the way, everything that's shown here, you can get, I love short codes. You can get it at sqlps.io/xecode. Does anybody have any questions so far? Yes, yes.
With the SQL DBA migration, would that work if I had like a Azure DB and an on-prem one?
So I'm working on figuring all of that out. We do backup and restore, and I see that there was one that there's like, it supports Azure Credential. So I have restored to Azure in some way. We also support DAC packs, which I think is kind of the official way that Microsoft does it. I could be wrong. And then in the next year, I'm going to be looking into the SQL managed instance. So we do support Azure, but it's limited. However, it is something that's on the agenda for us to support and simplify. All right. So for those of you in the crowd who aren't familiar with Profiler, I generally don't include this, but I'll just show you why people like it. You just open it up and then you could run it, and check this out. So if I run a command, it was as simple as that. You just saw that it was a couple clicks. If I run a command, it'll show up here. So, you know, if you're curious as to, oh, what's happening at this time, you can use this trace and you can see what happened there. Sorry, yeah, this is a trace. But it was just like 3 clicks. And I'll show you later how long it takes to set up an extended event. All right, so you may be curious, whenever we're looking at this, the PowerShell people and the SQL people as well, who, if they are not, will become PowerShell people. There's a little timer here that we love. A lot of times in the past, you have this measure command, and I'd have to like, oh God, I need to include in the measure command. So you'd run the command, then have to rerun it. But we have this nice little prompt here. So if you go to dbatools.io/prompt, a lot of people like this, so I wanted to include it in here. You could just copy and paste this into your profile. Here's the instructions, and you too can get a pretty built-in timer. So as I mentioned before, I got that list from Aaron Stellato's blog, and what I decided was I wanted to figure out, you know, why people weren't adopting it. I knew why I wasn't. And then I wanted to use PowerShell to answer all of those complaints, to see if I could use PowerShell to increase that adoption. So just to get it out the way, there are some things that we cannot fix with PowerShell. So for the complaint that the consistent interface for mixed environments, can't fix that. So that's closed, won't fix. You guys remember Microsoft Connect? You know, they would be like, close, won't fix. Closed, this is a horrible idea. Everything was closed, this won't fix. Another one was that Microsoft Premier support still asks for traces. Whenever I read Bob Ward's response, it seemed like it was very legitimate, so I could see why they do. That's closed, this won't fix. And the consistent user experience across SSAS and the database engine. I don't use SSAS, so I have no idea. Maybe this works on that, but I haven't even tried. So the first thing, the complaint, that people already have a library of profiler templates. And my answer to that is, that's cool. You can install your traces, and then what we'll do is we'll use PowerShell to convert that trace into an extended event session, and we'll just do it with a couple pipes. So here we could see that we have get DBA trace. And what's awesome about PowerShell, like if you knew that the stored procedure that was executing in the background, I had to Google it every single time because I forgot. You know, if I was doing a project, I'd remember it for a few days, but every time I was like, oh, what's that stored procedure again? And with PowerShell, since it has that you know, consistent verb noun syntax, then it's really easy to remember. All of the commands within dbatools start with DBA. It's so that we don't have naming conflicts. Microsoft has SQL, and we took DBA. So you can see here, this is way easier than remembering some random stored procedure. And then what we'll do is we'll pipe it to convert to a DBA XE session, and we'll give it a name. And what this does is it wraps Jonathan Cahias's stored procedure in the background. So we took it, we modified it slightly, and what it'll do is it'll install the stored procedure in the background, it'll do the conversion, and then it drops it. So let's go ahead and run that. This is taking we specified the default ID of 1, and just like that, it took that trace and made it into a session and then started it. And you could see it just took one second, almost 2 seconds to do that conversion and then start it up. So, let's go look at SSMS. All right, so this is SQL Server Management Studio. And this is why people are like, oh God, man, check it out. So you have to expand that, and you have to expand management, then you have to expand extended events, and then you have to expand sessions. But then, oh, there it is. So it started, which is nice. And then here's some information. There's some events that, you know, were included in that default trace. It just did the comparison and created that, which is pretty cool. Is that exciting for the SQL people? Whenever this first worked, I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. I loved it. All right, so now that I have convinced everybody to move to extended events, let's go ahead and stop it and remove the traces. Just kidding. I'll convince you over time. But until then, again, we go back to that super easy to remember format, right? We have get, and then we have stop. So let's go ahead and stop this trace. So just as easy as that, we have the ID trace of 2, and that was just a little sample trace that I had created. And then what we can do here is out grid view. So out grid view is something that's available that's not available in PowerShell Core, but if you're using PowerShell 5.1 on Windows, it is awesome. If you use that pass through, it gives you this OK button down at the bottom. So you can just select what you need and then pass it on. And we support this with migrating databases, migrating logins, so you can pick what you need and then just copy those over. So here we are going to stop. Let's see. Oh, there's another one there. I'm just going to stop that one and remove it. So this is actually executing a number of stored procedures in the bottom, but it's a nice little wrapper. So I selected the one that I wanted and then removed it. So you can see that it stopped it, it closed it, and it deleted it. So now that everyone is done with traces, let's talk about extended events. All right, so another complaint was that it's faster to set up a quick trace. You guys saw how fast that was. I just clicked a couple times. And that templates work remotely across all instances. And the answer is that now with PowerShell and dbatools, you can easily deploy all of your session templates, such as long-running queries, which is a prompt for me to ensure that I at least install that template. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get the templates. These are templates that I collected from across the web. I opened up SQL Server Management Studio, and that had a couple templates. Jess Borland does some talks about extended events. So I just went to all the community member sessions. I grabbed their extended events, and then I made them into templates. And then we're going to pass that again to an out grid view at the pass-through. And then we'll import these session templates to all of the SQL servers. And this is something that's important to notice. Whenever you're working with Profiler or you're working with SQL Server Management Studio, generally you're working with one server at a time. But with PowerShell, it's awesome because you can work with a ton of servers. In this case, since my VM is limited, it's just 2, but we will run that. So there's our servers. Going to execute this. These are all of the templates that we've included. And I love this because anywhere that you have dbatools, you have all of these templates. So there you can see, it is important to give attribution, you know, whether it's Jonathan, Aaron, or Jess, or anyone in the community that open sources their own stuff. We do ensure that we give that attribution there. Even Ola Hallengren, he was super pumped to have this included, which was exciting for me. So this is something that should be included in SQL Server Management Studio, which is filtering. It's really, really nice. So we can see before the long running queries. I believe that's the one that I prompted myself to install. Yes. So we're gonna click that, click OK. And here you can see that it just created 2 sessions on each of, or 1 session on each of my SQL servers, and it was just as fast as that. And the reason that it's 53 seconds is because it actually counts how long the out grid view is open. So that was super fast, but if there's no suitable template, what do? It's so, extended events are like so voluminous that I do recommend that you use SQL Server Management Studio to create new sessions. So let's go ahead and create a new session. We're going to name this session, oops, I don't want the wizard. Nobody ever wants the wizard. Let's see, yes. New session, Acme sample. And here we have, and this is something for the PowerShell people, you know, if you're like, man, where do you come up with commands? It's basically, what do I want to do? Whenever I'm making these modules, a lot of times I won't sit and write out the commands that I need. The first thing is like, well, I want templates. Well, first I have to import the template. So there's the import command. And then I want to, you know, create it. And then I want to look at it. So there's the get command. And then, you know, I'll open up SQL Server Management Studio and say, like, try to get the correlation for this and ensure that, you know, if I'm creating something, that it'll support this as well. So I do use GUI queues to help me design what I want within the PowerShell module. All right, so for the events, oh God. This is usually done by Spaghetti. So I'm like, what is it? Oh, batch. I think he does the batches. There we go. All right, so we'll select this. So once you have this, then you go and you configure it. And let's say that you just want batches completed and started with, let's see, field. Let's see, the client app name. Like, see, I would like dbatools, please. So there you have a filter. You have some things that we should probably click here. I don't know. I kind of want to pick everything, but I'm just going to pick a couple things randomly. Who knows? All right. That looks good. That looks good to you, Craig?
Yep.
All right. And the event fields, I don't see anything there. So, and then I go here to data storage. Now, this is pretty cool. This is the different kind of target types. So you can either keep it in memory or the ring buffer. Or you could keep it in a file. So, you know, we could say event file, and then we'll just name it Acme sample, and it'll automatically do things. And then here with the advanced, I'll just say, you know, the dispatch latency, whenever you're watching it come in, I want it to be just 1 second. I haven't noticed any problems with this, so I'll do that. So you could see this was a little bit more torturous than just opening up Profiler and clicking next, next, next. And granted, this gave me more options, but it was, you can see how it's kind of a deterrent because it is kind of complicated. So we'll create that. And here's the thing, is that generally whenever you create these, it does take time. It is a pain, but it only happens at most once a month. And then from there, what you can do is use PowerShell to get that session, export the template, and then import it to another instance. So we'll do that right now with this command. Oh no, it didn't exist. Oh, I went backwards. I'm gonna go and make one that's simple because I will not fail. I miss my spaghetti. Oh wait, see, I went for the wizard again. Let's see. Yes, I want to cancel. All right, hold on. Y'all stick with me here. I'm gonna make it super simple. Acme sample. But hey, that warning was very nice and direct. Let's see, batch. That was just recently added to dbatools. So if you've ever used dbatools and you're like, man, they have like execute non-query didn't work on master and it's super uninformative. Now we actually have informative error messages. So I'm just gonna go with something simple like hope database ID, and then it'll just, you know, I don't wanna even mess with that. So let's try this again. All right, yes. Works as expected, thank God. Now what it did was this export session templates, it's important for me that something defaults to something reasonable. I don't wanna have to specify a path every time. And so by default, we put it where SQL Server Management puts it, which is in XEtemplates. And you can see here, there's the acme sample.xml, and that was used to, we just took that, we piped it into this import, and then we installed it on SQL 2016. So if we go here to 2016 and we do a refresh, we go to management, and then we go to extended events, and then we go to sessions, you can see that there is acme sample. All right, so the next one is persistence. So extended events are persistent, and that's actually a good thing, especially if they're manageable, right? One of the reasons why you wouldn't want a bunch of them is if you have to go to every single server in SSMS, you have to click that every time. And that's what's awesome about PowerShell is that it makes it manageable. So, you know, a lot of people, they don't want the XEvents to persist, and that's fine. Like, I don't want to push my views on anyone. I know for me, I thought the same thing because it was just what I was used to. So PowerShell gives you time to discover that for yourself. Until then, check this out. So we'll take the server names, we'll pipe that to get DBA XE session, again, piping that to out grid view, and then we can remove things. So let's see what we'll remove. Oh, check this out. So these are all of my extended events across 2 of my SQL servers. And we'll just remove goodness. I usually have cues to tell me which one. I'll just go with always on health. And there you could see that it was removed just like that. So we have these commands, and not just get, not just remove, not just start, but all of these. So these are all of our extended event related commands that'll help you really ease into extended events at your own pace. And there are it was a lot of fun to code. This was like 2 months worth of convincing myself, and then it worked. So some people forget to stop their extended events, right? They're started and then they just keep going. So they have a problem with remembering to turn it off, and PowerShell can help in 3 ways. The first one is, this is really cool. This was suggested by Pitferg, Drew Ferguel. Nobody knows how to say his last name. He was like, Christy, you should do a stop at. And I was like, man, that's a really great idea. And so here you have start DBA XE session. You specify the session and then stop at. And I really love the way that PowerShell works with this get date. You just add minutes, which is similar to T-SQL. So with this, it's going to create an auto-disappearing SQL agent job that the only thing that it's supposed to do is stop the session, and then it disappears. So let's go ahead and do that. So there we go. We are starting it. It just created it in the background. And when we go and we look, that's on SQL 2017. We'll take a look at those jobs. Check it out. So you can see here that the steps are that it you know, does the T-SQL stop and then it deletes itself. So you can see there. I can run this and it'll say that it errors out, but it actually doesn't. What it does is, because whenever I was testing this, I was like, oh my God, why is it red right here? And then I realized SQL Server Management Studio tries to get the status of it, but it already dropped itself because that's what it's supposed to do. So it can't access it. So it's just kind of more of a GUI thing. Now we can see it ran, it stopped the session, and then it disappeared. And that's super cool. Another thing that you could do is use dbatools. dbatools is a module that was built by the SQL community. And it basically, you know how we all have checklists? Whenever you wake up as a DBA, you have your daily, weekly, monthly checklists. That's what dbatools does. So you can also use this. Won't get into it super much, but you could just say, listen, long-running queries must always be stopped whenever this command runs at 12 o'clock at night. And so then it could check to see, is it stopped? It runs that check. Is it stopped? Yes, it is. So that command that you saw, it worked. And it started it. It created that. I ran it. And then it stopped the session. And again, you know, it's all about PowerShell makes it really easy to manage. So you could start things in mass. You can stop them in mass. I could highlight all of these and I could stop all of them if I wanted to. But I just canceled it out. So another complaint was that people don't know XML and XPath, which are required to query the results. But now you can easily use PowerShell syntax using read DBA exe file. You can also use the same syntax with watch DBA exe session. So the file is something that was written to file. Watching it watches the ring buffer. So this will read all files from all sessions if they exist, which is pretty cool, right? So we're going to get those sessions. We're going to pipe it to DBA, read DBA exe file. We'll pipe this, and this is so much easier than the T-SQL that used to be required. So imagine, you know, you want to switch over to extended events, and you're like, how do I query it? And this was the answer. Like, this is offensive to me. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, this isn't a solution. Like, to do this, it's not pretty. It's not easy. It's useful, but it's very time consuming, and it put a lot of people off. And I think whenever people think of extended events, at least for me, this is what I think of: unusable data. So now with PowerShell, man, check this out: where object client app name equals DBA tools, and we can just put that out to a grid view. So this is cool because it'll just tell you it doesn't have an associated target file. You're trying to read that, no big deal. Look at this. This is so much easier than all of that crazy XML that you saw in the other page. And then again, you could use your filtering. You can add your criteria and do all of that. So this makes it far more approachable. And I do, you know, I was really happy. I don't know if you guys that are into SQL Server have seen this, but with the newer versions of SQL Server Management Studio, and I accidentally opened up Git, whoops. They do have the XE profiler. Now, in the past, they didn't have this. So the profiler, the trace profiler looked way easy. Now you could just do this, and this opens up the extended events, and you can watch things come in. So if I were to run the command, darn, let's see, I don't even know. What command do I want to run? Get DBA database, SQL instance, and then this, and then it should appear there. Oh, it's still running. That's why. Okay, never mind. Let's see. I was like, why isn't it responding? Where is my, okay, cool. Whew. So there's all of my databases, and I should see, there we go. I should see some data that's coming here. So if you are used to a profiler, in my opinion, even if you want to skip the PowerShell part, if you install SQL Server Management Studio, again, you'll just be looking at one server at a time because this is only associated with 2017. And all of our dbatools commands, they do accept multiple instances. But if you just want to use SQL Server Management Studio because that's what you're comfortable with, this is awesome. I think that this is just so much better than it used to be. You don't even have to run the profiler and start it anymore. Oh, let me actually stop that because maybe it'll take some juice that I don't really have. All right. So the other thing is that, you know, it's a lot of work. There was a bunch of people that are like, I'm lazy and extended events are just tons of work. Well, you can't get any lazier than PowerShell. Check this out. So we have all of our corporate templates, right? Yeah, you have your first sample and your second sample. But imagine if this was your library. I love this. You do a get child item. So you just do basically, that's a dir, if there's any DOS fans out here. You do a dir, and then you pipe that to import dba-exe session. And again, we'll import it to all of our servers. So we'll install both of those on this. Oh my God, that was so fast and so much easier. Is everybody willing to switch over now to extended events? What up? All right, the next one. This is, the complaint was that you can't replay events from a session. Well, now you can read and you can execute that file. So this is cool. We have this small sample. We'll pipe it to a read, and then we'll use invoke dba-exe replay. Now this is, I included it. It was basically a code challenge. Can I do it? Do I recommend it? Probably not, because look, I mean, it basically just takes that exact SQL, those exact SQL statements that were in there, and it plays it, you know, on here on 2017. So in this case, it created a database named Superfresh, and then it did a couple things. So yeah, it went through that file, and then it invoked all of the T-SQL statements against this SQL instance. Now, if you want an online replay, because that one requires reading from the file, you can check out our preview of Smart Replay, which was created by Gianluca. So the first thing we're going to do is set this up. So we're going to set up the replay. And I hope that whenever it starts up, I can do this pretty left-right window thing, but we'll see. All right, so the setup is, we just executed that. And now we're going to make sure that the session is started. All right, so we just started a session, far easier than go and find it in SQL Server Management Studio. All right, the next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to display the events that are coming through, right? So it says, please go start your workload. And usually we do this, I'm remoting in to my laptop. And so I don't think that my shortcut keys are gonna work. So bear with me while I just kind of do that. All right, the next thing, this is for the PowerShell people on the crowd. I don't know if you know this, but you can pipe anything to clip. So what I'm gonna do here, this is the password, and I'm just gonna pipe that to clip. What up? That was cool. All right, now we're gonna set up our credential. So the credential is the replay user, and I'm just gonna Control V, and I know for sure that this is gonna work. All right, so my credential has been created. And if you look at the credential, you're like, you know, it doesn't actually show the password, it's just a secure string. The next thing that you wanna do is use new dba-exe Smart Replay. You wanna set up a response. So we'll say, we wanna replay this on SQL 2016 using this credential. Right, so that just creates an object. And then start dba-exe Smart Target. What we're gonna do is, we are going to log into the SQL 2017 instance. We're going to get that session workload replay, and we're going to, everything that occurs in here is going to play against that. So let's go and do that. And what this does is it actually creates a job in the background. So it's a PowerShell job. And now we are going to start the workload. I'm across my fingers. All right, woo, I see his workload over here. And hopefully I've done them right. Yes, awesome. So everything that's happening over here, including my dbatools commands, is happening over here as well. Oh man, wait, this isn't, no. Look, we're gonna sit here and watch it. There we go. Whoo! All right. So this is matching up, and this is really nice. So you could see that the replay has worked. Fortunately, every time that we've done this demo, it has worked. So I'm really excited about it. One of the ways that we ensure that our commands work is with every single commit to our GitHub repo, we run hundreds of tests, and all of those tests have to pass before we allow it into our repo, which is just, it allows me to sleep at night, because in 2016, I wasn't sleeping very much, worried that, you know, whenever I hit merge, that I would break everybody's dbatools module. So there's your replay, super cool. Another thing that nobody mentioned this, but we're just gonna throw it in. Ooh, okay, I have just not so much time. All right, but we're almost done. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna do is you can even get notifications. So now we're going to start the deadlock graphs. If you aren't familiar with this PowerShell splat, instead of doing, you know, start DBA XE smart target dash, or sorry, no, that's, this would be the email response. New DBA XE smart email dash SMTP server dash to dash sender, and it goes all across the screen. You have to scroll all that way. Instead, you can just use a splat. So we set these parameters like that, very pretty. I like pretty. And then we have this email response that we'll set up, all right? And then we will set the, so we'll do another smart target, and we will say the session deadlock graphs and the responder. So instead of being a replay responder, this time it's the email responder. So we have that email response, yes. Okay, so now that's running in the background, and now we're gonna make some deadlocks. And then we're going to, I'm going to start up a whole bunch. This is using multi-threading, and my laptop isn't that fast, so I'm going to just take a sip of beer and wait for it to do its thing. I tried high performance, but Parallels just isn't a fan. All right. But, you know, it's pretty. And there we have it. You can see these emails that we're getting. So, you know, and this is a useless kind of thing. We don't need to know every single time, but you could see where you can go from that. You could even do some filtering for whatever it is that you need. So far, this has worked for every demo as well, which is really exciting. All right, next is the perfmon mix. So the complaint is the ability to import perfmon data and look at trace and perfmon data at the same time. So looking at this, whenever I read that, I was thinking, how can I solve this with dbatools? So I had some goals. The first thing is that we have to export the XEvents to CSV. Then we have to export the perfmon to CSV, and then we have to mash them together. So the first thing that we enabled is exporting to CSV from the command line, and this is so dang cool. So we just, a whole bunch of piping. You have that get child item, you pipe that sample into export DBA XE CSV, you specify the path, and then here it is. So it'll come up. You guys, how awesome is that? It was so fast too. We actually matched Microsoft speed. SQL Server Management Studio does allow you to go and load it up and then do the exporting, but you know, that doesn't help with automation whenever a human is required to open up SQL Server Management Studio and press all of those buttons. With this, you can do automatic exports. So you could do it from this command line, or you can do it right from the SQL Server itself. And this does require admin access to, we use UNC paths, which is common within the SQL Server, like migration and things like that. So you can see that exported that CSV file, and yeah, It gave it an automatic name because I just gave it a path that was a folder. So let's go and look inside. We just double click, and there's more deadlock information. That's the deadlock information that we just generated. All right, next. Then we ensured that you can write to a local database so that you could use Power BI with that data source. So let's go ahead and take this queries and resources. And I'm really hoping, I don't remember starting this. It stopped. I don't know if there's going to be some stuff in there, but we'll see. Ooh, I think there might be because it's taken a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and look at SQL 2016. We're going to go to TempDB, DBO, queries and resources. It automatically created this table. And you guys, Write DBA data table is something that works with nearly every PowerShell object. So you can pipe the results of, get child item to it. You can pipe the results of a CSV. It makes it super easy to write data to your database. So let's go ahead and look at databases, system databases, TempDB tables. Whew, there it is. Let's see if it has some data. And it does. Awesome. Cool. So just like that, it created this information super quickly. Next up is perfmon. Similarly to the extended events templates, this will be an interest, I think, to just systems engineers in general. We have included some collector set templates with perfmon. If you're not familiar with perfmon, this is what it looks like. We like our data collector sets. The SQL Server community likes the SQL Server PAL stuff from Clint Huffman. He works with Microsoft. I think that this is cool. So Brad McGee, that was this famous DBA, and he wrote about correlating SQL Server Profiler with Performance Monitor. He's really one of the people that exposed this functionality. So what we're going to do is get this template, pick it, and then import it locally, and then we're going to store it. So now it's started that collector set. So we've taken care of that perfmon. If you guys remember, they had the extended event that was also long-running query. So now we have an extended event that's running as well as performance monitor. And then we have this where you can get it, pipe it to invoke DBA PF relog, which allows you to, check it out, it'll take that collector set information and it will export it to CSV. Then you can take that, all this information, and you can import it into Power BI. So if I were to start this process, it would look like this. And Power BI is beautiful. I think actually I'm going to be creating a session called Power BI for PowerShell professionals. Even if you aren't in the SQL Server data world, I think that Power BI is important for everyone, including PowerShell pros. This is not complete. It's want, right? So this was my dream. So this is, it looks really pretty. It's not complete. And we have gotten offers of help from Power BI whizzes, but I just haven't got around to actually executing on that. This is ultimately what we want. Once we have that Power BI that mashes both of them together, so we get that collector set, right? And then we update the data source. And then we get the XE session and we export that and we update the data source. Start DBA Power BI. It'll know exactly where to go and it'll be beautiful. But that's coming soon, I hope. And so finally, this is one of the final ones. The reading these files using XE file target read file taxes the SQL Server CPU. But now you can read the files from any workstation or server. So what this does is it takes that workload off of the SQL Server and puts it on the workstation. So now, if this was a remote server, it's running on my workstation and it's using my CPU instead of the SQL Server CPU. Or again, you can read locally and export to that remote table. So we can see this profiler, deadlock graphs. Did I hit execute? It was really fast. And it did it just that fast. So in conclusion, The complaint that it is harder than Profiler to train others. The answer is now it's as easy as teaching a couple PowerShell commands. And the complaint that extended events are more efficient for the SQL Server engine, but not more efficient for the DBA. The answer there is PowerShell closed as fix. What up? Fireworks. I don't know if you guys could see this remotely. Yeah.
Yes.
What? PowerShell is awesome. And that concludes today's session. Thank you so much for joining me. Do you guys have any questions? Do we have any questions? Do we have any converts? Tell me, everyone using traces? Yes, yes. I love it. Thank you guys. Even if you're just entertaining me, I love it, and I will think about it.
No, that was brilliant. Thanks a lot, Chrissy.
My pleasure.
This is some really interesting ones. I'm glad I've recorded it now. We'll go back and look over that again.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am obsessed with Glasgow, and I cannot wait to be back in September.
Yeah, we look forward to it.
And maybe forever.
Sounds good.
Cool, thanks a lot again.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's been fun.
Cheers.
Alrighty, bye-bye.